it certainly is, or it certainly reveals a different message than the culture of today is providing. And to be able to create that environment through the love of the Lord in us and His Spirit working in us, and that we get to then love others with that. And what a different picture than what the world is offering today.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, everyone, to Breaking Bread, the podcast brought to you by Apostolic Christian Counseling and Family Services. Excellent, as always, to have you along. My name is Matt Kaufman. I've got three friends and gentlemen in the room here: Brian Sutter, Kaleb Beyer, and who's that guy? Stickling.
Craig Stickling.
Good to have all of you here.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, glad to be here. We're going to talk about stress-reducing conversations. That's the mouthful title. Okay, and I'm going to let Kaleb kind of unpack this a little bit, because the idea came from some of Kaleb's teaching, and I was privy to it and listening to him talk about stress-reducing conversations, and I don't know, just my brain kind of exploded in some ways of like, that's helpful. And then I thought, hey, why not throw the two of you guys into the mix here to have a conversation?
Complicated.
Yeah, so we can raise the stress level.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then we're going to see how well this works, Kaleb.
Yeah, Kaleb, we're going to see what you can do.
Yeah. So, Kaleb, stress-reducing conversations. Start with just a definition or how we should think of it.
So kind of as the name applies, it's a particular type of conversation that the purpose is to reduce stress. So all couples at some level have like a how was your day conversation, right? When you get home, or sometimes in the morning. But often, or I shouldn't say often, at times, these conversations don't lead to reducing and relieving stress. They can actually lead to additional stress or more conflict or just tension. And so the idea is, how do we both have some structure but intentionality to have a conversation, in this case, in the context of marriage or a couple, where it's like, you think about, oh, that was nice. This kind of release of stress, of tension, of things that just come up during the day.
This is a type of conversation. I think that's helpful. As you mentioned, the purpose of this conversation is stress reducing. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not sure I go into a lot of conversations with an objective or a purpose, right? Communication is kind of that large umbrella. We're communicating right now. Well, we do that. But to have a specific, like, you know what, I'm entering this conversation with this end in mind, I think in and of itself might be a good place to start.
Oh, I think it's extremely helpful. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about all the different places it can go. And if you've got all those options on the table, it's hard to know where to go or what to turn. But if it's like, okay, I'm going to just try to be a peacemaker. I mean, that would be one way to kind of maybe define a stress-reducing conversation. I'm just going to try to be a peacemaker. That at least gives you a lane to try to stay in, and then you can kind of see where it goes from there.
Because there's some conversations where it's like, okay, I need to maybe learn something. Maybe there's a conversation where I need to direct something. Maybe there's a conversation that I need to provide some constructive criticism. But we've got lots of purposes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And how many times do we just respond? We're really not even thinking about an end goal or a start goal. It is just, we're in the moment of something and we're just responding out of the emotion or the feeling or the thought of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's go more to that purpose thing, Kaleb. Stress reducing. Mm-hmm. Give us some more ideals to think about. This conversation should do the following.
Yeah. So certainly the concepts of, we would just even say active listening apply here, right? Of the whole idea of eye contact, presence, asking open-ended questions. I think what's unique about this conversation, like you said, other types you might be headed for making a decision, or even in conflict resolution, we're going to achieve resolve in the sense of conflict. But one of the unique things about this is the stress-reducing conversation is about things outside the relationship. So it's very intentional about creating a environment where, sometimes there's stress between us in the context of marriage or any relationship, for that matter. But this is about not stress between us. It's stress that's happened outside of us that we're talking about with the other, right?
So in that way, we kind of get on the same team.
Yes, correct. And in some levels, that's a pretty important part of the process. It is to say, hey, we're together in this.
Okay, so I think that's the important mindset that I kind of was asking for or fishing for, like what our purposes are. I think that's a tangible purpose. It's like, okay, in this type of conversation, stress-reducing conversations, we really team up. Teaming up is really big. And what it means to team up, like when you have a team, that means you have a common opponent. And it ain't your teammate.
That's unfortunate.
Well, Craig, this has got Kaleb brings a husband and wife lens. I can sure try it on in the family in other contexts, right?
Yeah, certainly. Our children, they give us great opportunities to practice some of this, right? And they bring a certain degree of innocency, but also their own trying to learn and figure this out as well. And the interesting thing, I think, with children or younger people anyway, is the sense that when you think of reducing stress, and they're like emotionally charged.
Yeah.
And those two things don't necessarily play well in the same sentence.
Yeah.
And so to be mindful of, if I'm speaking with my child, that they're going to be emotionally operating off their operating system, it's going to be very emotionally driven. And I want to be able to recognize, how can I calm? How can I reduce? How can I minimize that emotion so we can actually get to maybe some meaningful content?
The other dynamic you have with children is you have a maturity gap, right? For children. There's an immaturity gap that sometimes, I don't know, it's hard to be a stress reducer because I want to correct some things. I want to, some of that emotion, as you mentioned, Craig, might not be in proportion to the situation. And I don't step into that on the same team. I become an opponent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And begin to react to it.
I begin to react.
Yes. Yes. Which moved down the path of like then becoming more critical or judgmental versus being in a space of, oh, how do I understand and empathize?
So Kaleb, you just gave us now another really important lens, right? Listening, empathetic is in this category of stress reducing, and criticism and critical is in this other one. Okay, that's helpful. I mean, those are things we could tell.
So I think along those same lines, it's like you're trying to understand or give them the sense of I see you, or I'd at least like to see you. If I don't at this time, I'm open to trying to see where you're coming from, what it is. It looks like you're distressed. I'd be interested in you telling me about that distress. And I'm going to try to just understand rather than try to fix or figure out or problem solve. I just want to be a place that can hold it.
So, Brian, we could try this on for size, right? Brian, I got this coworker that's driving me nuts.
Oh, I can relate. Yeah. Okay. His name starts with a K.
I think it's getting a little more stressful in here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's play with that, actually, as funny as it is. What would it look like to have a stress-reducing response in that type of, because you come home at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
I did kid pickup today and this is what happened, right? Or we sometimes we try to step into this and talk about the stress, but it gets amped up instead of reduced. So I want that both illustrated. What does it look like to reduce, to step into that stress reducing? What might it look like if we don't?
Well, I'll maybe speak into a little bit of what tends to elevate it, is that if we see it as like something we need to speak into what they could do different, or so for example, Allison's like telling me about the frustration of picking up, well, you could have done this, or why didn't you do this, or you could have called here. Or
so helpful, man.
Exactly. You know what? Let me tell you about my day and what was hard. This seems like a pretty small deal. I mean, you can just like what was maybe small has now turned into a big deal.
This could not be true. All of those things could be true, but they're not helpful.
Yeah, not helpful. Let's just say a little bit about helpful.
Yeah,
they are helpful in a different conversation.
Oh, right.
They're not helpful in a stress-reducing, purposed conversation. They might be helpful in a critical, corrective conversation.
Right. Like a continuum sometimes I think about is that we as humans tend to move along the continuum of either being in protection, we're like protection mode, or connection. So you can move along that spectrum.
Protection or connection.
Connection, exactly.
Okay.
Depending on where you're at, what your stress level is, what the relationship is, you're going to be somewhere on that continuum. The more you're on the place of protection, it's going to be very difficult to be open to feedback. But if we can calm the emotion, then you start to be open to connection, and then you might be open to some feedback at that point.
Part of the conversation then requires us to learn how to tolerate uncomfortable emotions and sit when my spouse or my child or my coworker is really angry or really afraid. And that's not always easy for us to just sit here without moving into like correction mode or protection mode, but focusing on connection when there's a lot of negative intensity.
We kind of like to think that we're trying to calm the other person's emotions, but the reality is we're calming our own distress around their distress.
Just calm down, Brian.
Exactly. Okay. I'll show you to calm. You would tell me to calm down?
You haven't taken a deep breath.
Exactly. I'm just getting started. Cut that out. Okay.
But I do think like a space to be, because I think for all of us, I think this is true. We realize we're at places that sometimes things we know we should think differently, or we know what the right answer is, but we just need space to like vent, if I could say, or just release it. It's like, I know this is not going to come out well, but, and so I think some of the stress reducing conversation is that I realize this sounds crazy, but here's where I'm at.
So there really, it seems to me, requires a relational intelligence that a person who receives a stress-reducing conversation, receives it, is able to perceive this. So I'm looking at Craig now because I do find this space with kids to be really, really challenging because they say a lot of crazy things. So Craig, what would you be looking for? What would be some of your cues? Engaging with a child is like, you know what? I think this is a stress-reducing, purposed conversation. What are you going to need to put on the back burner? And then what are you going to put on the front?
Yeah. I like trying to remind myself that they're in practice mode. They're practicing to get to be an adult. And so what they're doing and going through, that's, if I see that as practice and not necessarily this is a finished product, but I see that as practice. And even they're going to maybe struggle with some emotion identification. And so, you want to, it's good to step in to see if they're able to make that connection. And so when you speak into, wow, you know what, you really sound like you're frustrated or discouraged. Is that the right word? Or how are you feeling right now when you're telling me about this? And so you're very intentional in checking in with that.
So that would be one of the be one of the skill set to say, it sounds like you're very irritated, or it sounds like that was a hurtful.
Yeah.
Is that good practice? I'm trying to learn here how to do it. That would be good practice.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because we can see something or think we see something, and that may not be accurate to them. We might be, that's exactly an anger mode, but they might be in a different perspective. They're like, no, I'm sad, or and so we're checking and connecting on that, which in a sense gives some sense of we're on the same team here because I want to know how you're doing. I'm not just going to tell you stop being so angry or this conversation is over. So you're checking in with them to get that understanding.
Yeah, it's almost as if you're giving them permission to have those emotions.
Yeah,
and you're identifying them together, working through them together.
Yeah, and like you had shared that, there's a solution or maybe there's a teachable moment to get to, but the door to the teachable moment is I want to acknowledge how you're processing. I want to acknowledge what you're feeling right now. I want you to feel that you've been understood, and then that works us to, there might be something else to consider.
But your point is connection first.
Yeah.
And then you're in a better place to work the protection out.
Yes, exactly. Or just even help them feel safe enough that they can connect. They don't have to go into protection. I don't have to go into protection. We can just be here together.
Brian, let's go a little bit further into this. Not only we've talked about the family, we've talked about the spousal, but this is how we engage with neighbors. This is engaged public, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, we live in an amped up stress.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the only age I've ever lived in, so I get.
Yeah.
So they tell me.
Yes.
So they tell me it's stressful out there, right?
But I think that just knowing that is a helpful thing, to know that in general, that's the message out there, that it is stressful, and that most of us would agree with that, even if we don't compare it to previous generations. So knowing that going in, again, kind of like where we started, gives us this category of like, if I can just be a calming presence, if I can help engage relationship in a way that reduces stress, that's a good place to go. So then as I interact with people, hopefully my eyes are open to say, how do they seem like they're doing? I might start with the assumption that they're probably stressed, but then to kind of check in, and if I notice like, boy, they seem quieter, or boy, they seem like maybe they look like they're upset, like, hey, how's it going? I think can be something to think about as we engage our wider world.
Yeah. Well, and what a tremendous gift we have to offer people.
Right, yeah.
Is to be a soothing presence, right? Isn't that what we're talking about?
Right.
For sure.
Because I think sometimes the assumption around Christians is that's not what we do. We come in and we judge. We come in and tell you what you're doing wrong. And if we can give them a little bit different experience of like, yeah, I think there is something that's true, and maybe we'll get to a point where I could share that with you, but I'm willing to start with just, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that judgment piece. I'm glad you brought that word up because I think it has a place here, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of hear that. I think it's kind of a common phrase, right? Non-judgment space, right? So let's just talk about that. And it has a place here in the stress-reducing conversation. Kaleb, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah. So I think part of the not judging is to be able to create an environment where someone can be open in a safe way, that it's not going to be automatically led to correction and even like getting it all right. Because part of, if you think about the stress reducing conversation, the idea is we're coming in, we use a scale of some sort, right? Of high emotion up here and low emotion, whether that's the red zone or in the green zone. And the idea of the conversation is, in order to have a healthy dialogue in any type of relationship, we need to bring the intensity down. And what we find is judgment doesn't bring the intensity down, right? It actually leads to separation, not connection, protection, like Brian was saying, not connection. And so yes, there's a time for critical thinking. There's a time to think through, how does this even align biblically, right? We want to get there. And of course, we want to move in that direction. But there's a path that's helpful to move there. And one of those paths is, I'm not judging you. So I think that's the other piece too, is right, that, I can think about a topic critically without thinking about a person critically. And so in the stress reducing conversations, creating space where, hey, we're together. I'm with you. But part of it is in the responsibility of the listener, right, to be able to create that space like has been shared, whether it's, active listening.
Would you say then part of what a listener does in a stress-reducing conversation is separate the issue from the person so that they can be with that person even though they may disagree?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
For sure.
Absolutely. That's important.
And I think, too, trying at least initially maybe to set down, like, is this accurate? If we get caught on accuracy, then that's going to make it very difficult for the conversation to be able to move from anywhere. Whether it's we're having a conversation with our child, a spouse, or a neighbor, if we're fixated on, is this 100% accurate, that's kind of a non-starter for kind of a stress-reducing conversation.
That leads a little bit to a question that I had is, what makes this difficult? What is our mindset often, or how do we think that maybe we need to change a little bit in order to engage stress-reducing conversations? And maybe that fixated on accuracy is one. Right. Would that be fair?
I think so. Instead to maybe think, okay, right now I'm listening to and trying to interact with the emotion. And if I can do that, then there's probably a pathway to being able to speak to the mind and the logic. But if I start there, I'm probably going to lose both. Yeah.
And this may not just be related to younger people, but I think there's certainly a degree of efficiency, right? Or it's such go, 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 fast, 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 solve, 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 that I can hear 3 words of what you're telling me, and now I've got a solution. So I'm now going to give that solution to you, and boom.
Right.
Cross that off. Good job, Craig. And then we move on.
Yeah, I'm all about the stress-reducing conversation, but I'm going to do it along with a bunch of other conversations right at the same time.
And I think which brings up an interesting point to think about if thinking about stepping into stress-reducing conversations is totally overwhelming, then maybe just start with, I'm going to try to stick in a conversation for a little bit longer than I would naturally. Like we're just talking about exercising muscles of being able to engage conversation, stay in conversation. And if that's where you start, that's great. This here, stress-reducing conversation has a lot more skills involved too. And so just start somewhere. It's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Kaleb, you kind of alluded to this. You really actually mentioned some do's and don'ts as it concerned couples. Like, don't talk about this thing. If you're going to do a stress-reducing conversation, don't talk about this. Instead, you talk about some of these other things. As if to say, this is something very strategic that couples should do. And so I want you to speak to this. Like, in your recommendation, should couples engage in stress-reducing conversations in intentional ways, and how do you set that up for success?
Certainly, they should engage. We all should. But for couples, I mean, because if you think about it, it builds that kind of sense of connection, emotional intimacy, a sense of resilience, right? Who else would we want to turn towards when we're experiencing stress than our spouse?
Right.
And too often we turn to other things.
We will find the soothing in some place.
For sure. And if there's a way that, and again, even in starting in small ways, that we can start to do this as a couple, which actually is a pathway if you think about it for couples. If we can start doing the stress-reducing conversations, then we can maybe begin to even start stepping into conversations where there's stress between us in a different way as well, because we're building those muscles of tolerating some of this intense emotion, but it's not between us.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, so I let me check in on this.
Yeah.
It's not that there's topics that have to be on the table with stress-reducing conversations as much as like to get to the really hard topics between you, you're going to need quite a bit of practice. Is that? Or would you say there's topics like you just don't do this with?
Yeah, there's topics you don't do. So the way it's set up is no topics between the two of us. So if finance is a conflict between us, that's not the stress-reducing conversation. Okay. But hey, our kids could be one, or something outside the relationship. Yeah. But if it's between us, it's off the table. And so again, I think the idea is, how do we bring down a little bit of the tension while there's still some negative emotion, stress there that we can support? That ability to co-regulate, to support each other.
And what can you be on the same team about, I think is really, really helpful for me. That was an aha.
I think there's a piece of that, Kaleb, that parallels into even when we talk with our kids. If we only talk with them about 5 subjects, and after a while they're going to know, oh, here comes mom or dad, and their stress is going to go up because it's going to be one of those 5 things, and I know I'm not going to want to know how this goes. And so in that sense, being able to expand past that and beyond that and create more of a wider breadth of care and insight with our kids can maybe help with the big 5 that, maybe we do talk about that from time to time. But if that's all we talk about, that's just what they see in us.
Now, the $10,000 question for Craig is, how do you get into the stress-reducing conversation when the teenager answers with a one-word answer? And it's a grunt and a groan, and you're not can't quite make it out.
Yes.
Well, let me get my paper.
That doesn't
Take some
happen,
notes.
Matt. That is not happening.
That's only in the coffee house.
But there needs to be some verbal exchange, doesn't there, for this to really happen?
Yeah.
There actually needs to have some conversational skills to do this.
And meeting, I don't know if it's true for you brothers, but how often it feels like an inopportune time that they're at the place. So there may be one-word answers after school, but hey, 10 o'clock at night, they end up in the bedroom and they're starting to talk. And it's like, are you serious?
Yes.
And so I think for us, how do we step into that? Because that's not comfortable, but we have to meet them when they're ready to talk.
And maybe the topics they're going to be open to discussing are going to be very different than the list that we had in mind.
Yes, true.
And that's a piece of connection, isn't it? That knowing that their world top 5 things may not even be on anything that's like, oh, I could care less about this. But it's really important to them why that one person isn't sitting with that other person at lunch. And that just has them all just upset. And they want to explode into that, and just to be able to be like, all right, I'm glad to be here. Let's hear it, right?
Well, something that's becoming more and more on my radar is AI chatbots, AI companions.
Yeah.
Widespread, and they've got statistics already that 3 and 4 teenagers have already played around with AI companions, right? I mean, ChatGPT will do it, and you can give it some emotion, give it some personality. I mean, you talk about them having a place to ask that question. And as I hear this conversation about stress-reducing conversation, I dare say the AI companion does this very well. Non-judgment, empathetic, if you get your settings right, listens, remembers, lingers, will stay with you as long as you want to chat.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if we don't step into this as human beings, it's going to get outsourced.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Because all of us, want our emotions to be regulated. Like we don't like to feel distress. So you either go to things that are healthy or unhealthy. And as humans, the way God's created us to go to each other is that's how we're designed. And we want to be able to do that. Now, historically we've gone to substances or other things like that. And now there's this kind of in-between space that you're talking about, this AI, that you kind of have the perception that maybe I'm interacting with a person, but you're not. That's really...
But it soothes me in all the ways that I'm looking.
Yes, exactly. And it's going to be able to do this much better than any of us around the table. And if we don't learn how to tolerate our own emotions, help them learn how to tolerate, emotions and the difficulty of being in relationship, and that sometimes your parent, your coworker, whoever is going to really mess it up. And we have grace to each other. And how do we hang in there with each other? There's a lot that'll be interesting to see how do we help ourselves as well as the next generation grow up in that.
Yeah.
Back to stress-reducing conversation, it is part of the skill of how do we regulate ourselves to be at a place that fear doesn't drive the conversation or correction doesn't drive the conversation, but presence does.
And even thinking about that, my mind goes to Jesus and the woman on the well at the well, right? Like he is such a master in all of these things we ever talk about. But him being able to pick up, she's going to be in distress here, and this is like, I don't know if he's thinking this or not, but I'm going to he gives her a different experience than what she thought, and so you kind of just get the sense that the guard kind of comes down, the stress comes down. And they have, at the end of the day, a conversation where truth is introduced, and it's actually relieving more than just more further distressing. It's just beautiful. And if you read that and you read it through this lens, it's like, wow, that's who I want to be. That's how I want to interact with people.
Yeah, well, the protection to connection works so well in that story, right? Even the disciples had a protective mindset, like, what is he doing here, and all of that. Yeah. And she did too. Yeah. But Christ had that connection that was able to disarm her protection, which was just I think even back to you, Kaleb, I think some hope here, some beautiful hope here is, as believers, wow, we should be able to step into the stress-reducing conversation as well as any, right? Yeah. And what a gift to offer our stressful world, our neighbors, our children, our spouses, right? What an inroad into truth.
Yes.
I think is exciting.
Another wrinkle that comes to mind here is just the reality that we're not saying that you can't share your opinion or your perspective. I think that's actually a really important part of a stress-reducing conversation, because one of the things that tends to increase stress is like not knowing what the other person is thinking. So if we can receive what they've said and then share what we're saying in a way that's helpful, that actually can be quite stress reducing, even if it's different than what they've shared. So for example, like if I'm in a conversation with another parent at the, middle school basketball game and they're frustrated because we should only be playing the kids that put us in the best position to win. And I say, oh, that's interesting. I appreciate hearing that. From my perspective, one of my main goals is that, my son gets the opportunity just to have some character development. And so I think that is served whether we win or lose. Like, oh, okay, it's just a different perspective. And that can reduce stress even if it's not necessarily the same perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is, or it certainly reveals a different message than the culture of today is providing. And to be able to create that environment through the love of the Lord in us and His Spirit working in us, and that we get to then love others with that. And what a different picture than what the world is offering today.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Craig, Kaleb, Brian. This has really been, I think, helpful. And I've really learned a lot, right? And I really going back to kind of the beginning of what's the purpose here. And I think if I was more purposeful in my conversations, even the ones that I don't instigate, and I think that's a little bit the catchiness here, because these stress-reducing conversations, sometimes we didn't ask for them. They came upon us. Am I wise enough to detect it, recognize my purpose in it, regardless of what my frame of mind was? Mm-hmm. That's going to be that's going to be the test right there, right? Yeah. But I think having the purpose is helpful, because I think we're always trying to evaluate, what should I say in this moment, and what should I do, and did it get it right, or was that a successful? Well, stress reducing, I think, is really, really helpful. And when we have stress reducing conversations with our loved ones, with our neighbors, with our spouses, we have a better chance of having the next good, healthy conversation, right? Thank you, all of you, for being on. God bless you, each one, for listening. We hope and trust, pray that this has been helpful.